Welcome back. It's the multiverse. I'm streaming to you from another universe here. Let me just pull up my Streamlabs so I can see if any of you provided any super chats. Donations are much appreciated. It must have logged me out. I gotta sign back in once access to my account. All right, we are up and running. Let's see, recent events. Let's see if we got any super chats and donations I can give a shout out to. Yes, thank you, Dave. Our regular contributor and supporter, Dave the Philippian, donates $10. Thank you. That really helps. Let's see. What are the topics for today? Forgive me, it's been a while. Because I've been in the midst of finals and grading. I did really good this semester. I started actually grading early. As papers were coming in early, I was reading them and grading them. And, let's see, I've got my list here. I'm not going to show it because I don't want to dox any students' names. But that's what I was working on all last week, and also giving finals, and not just grading papers, but assignments and different. It's a really stressful, busy time. And finished that on, when was that? Friday? Must have been, because I went skiing Friday. And I wouldn't have gone skiing unless I had all my work done. Now, of course, there was always something that comes up. Like one student had written me, they missed the final and thought, we have like a philosophy project, and all the classes that I teach, I usually do this. One of them was a Kahoots game where everybody has, questions from the semester on various topics that we've covered, and then the students play each other and for points, just for fun. There's no real losers as far as the loser gets points deducted, but it's a fun project to kind of accumulate everything and solidify everything that one's learned over the semester. And what I typically do is the day there's like last week was like final schedule, which is not normal like times that normally you would teach. It's all over the place because the administration has to basically fit in everybody's finals from all the different classes that they take. So I don't even know how they figure that out, what kind of formula they do. But what I typically do is the day that we would normally come in to take a sit-down final, we play a philosophical Jeopardy game or a Kahoots game or something like that. That was the project that the students had worked on. And then I had opened up an online final that they have like 2 hours to sit down and basically take a final from the previous Thursday up until when we come in to technically sit down for a final, but we don't, we play a game. That's when it closes, and all the work has to be in. Anyway, some student had written me that, because I saw they got a 0 on the final, they thought the Jeopardy or Kahoots game was the final. And I'm like... And here I got an email like, well, can I make it up? And part of me just wants to be kind of rigid and be like, that's crazy, like how you didn't know in the syllabus and all the times that we went over that I put a study guide up and that like it's in the educational software. You can see all the assignments and that there was a final exam opened up. So I have no idea like what goes on in people's heads and how they can miss something so obvious. So I just explained this to the student, but then of course I'm a very charitable professor, and so I said, yeah, you could, don't let it happen again. You know, you should have known, but you can take the final exam. So, yeah, and it did. It brought their grade. They did pretty good. So, oh, that would be fun. Oh, we should. I wonder if I could pull that up. Let's play. Let's do it. Let's play the Kahoots. I think I could pull it up from... Now, I didn't make these questions. I know some of them were, like, actually incorrect. But let's see if we can pull this up and actually play the game. That is a great... Final Jeopardy. Where's the other one? What a great idea. I didn't even think about that. Where is it? Let me just find it. Alright, I could just get smart and just put Kahoots on that search. Let me see. This is it. All right. Are you the owner of this Kahoot? Am I? I didn't create it. I own it. I'm the teacher. I own everything in my class. Why isn't it let me? Let's do Carroll College. Let me do continue with. I'm gonna do the Carroll account. Carroll College account. Oh, I gotta. Let's see if we can get this up and running. Good idea, guys. There should be 2 Kahoot games, I think. Let me see. Classic mode. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Here is the pin. I'm gonna share screen. Window capture. All right. Go ahead and use that game pin. 311102. And we'll get some more players and we'll play it. What a great idea. Thanks, guys. I think we get up to 10, I think, for this. So let's get 3 more and then we'll begin. I think some funny questions in this too. 2 more, come on. I know we've got more people in the chat. Actually, see if one more person can... Oh, we can get more. Wow, that's cool. Oh, wait, just a little bit more. How many before we start? Should we start? One more, come on. Can we get 12? One more, we need one more. Nice, Omar. Okay, let's go. Who is the philosopher who wrote the allegory of the cave? Socrates, Aristotle, Pythagoras, or Plato? Okay. 11 got it right. 1 got it wrong. There's always one. Okay, next. All right. Mongus Bongus is in the lead. What does a priori refer to? This is cool. The students actually created these questions. It's not me, so... All right, 6 got wrong, 2 got correct. Not depend on the senses. Innate. Very good. All right, let's do next. True or false? Aristotle's four causes were material, formal, final, and efficient. Ooh, 4 got it right, 3 got it wrong. Let's see if anybody... Mongus Bongus is still in the lead there, huh? All right, next question. What does the Greek word philos and sophos that make up the word philosophy mean? We had 2 more people got to answer. Okay, 8 got it correct. Love and wisdom. Sophia. True or false? An arche is not the first in a series. That one's kind of a difficult one, actually. Let's see. True, it's not arche, first in a series, but first in order of explanation. Which arche is associated with Thales, not Thales, Thales? Air, wind, water, or all 3? In other words, which is Thales' arche? Everything's made up of this, according to Thales. Water! Woo, that was a difficult one for you guys. All right. Next. In Plato's allegory, what do the shadows represent? The truth of the world, illusions and misconceptions, reality itself, or the future? Nice. 9 of you got illusions and misconceptions. This is fun. Potency is to blank as actuality is to what? Potency is to matter as actuality is to form. Potency is to matter as actuality is to knowledge. Potency is to form as actuality is to knowledge. Or is potency to form as actuality is to matter? That's a difficult one for you guys. Like, it's something we covered in class. I gave this formula. Potency is to matter as actuality is to form. That's some standard Aristotelianism right there. Hold on a second. What was the correct... What did they have as the correct answer? Maybe they were... Oh, 2. Yeah, I see. Got it. I thought they got it wrong, but sometimes I have to catch the students messed up on. But I think this one's pretty good. What does Anaximenes say all things come from and dissolve into? Water, air, dust, or fire? Air. 5 of you got that correct. Let's see if we change the scores here. And if you're watching the stream and you haven't signed up for this Kahoots, you can still try to play along in your mind. Which one of the following options is one of Aquinas' arguments for the existence of God? The wager, the argument for motion, God is a being that than which nothing greater could be conceived, or the argument for possibility and necessity. This is actually a tricky one. There's a trick in this. I noticed this student put this in here. Because there's one that sounds like it's actually his. The first was the argument from change, which in the argument itself is one of the things you can think through is motion as a type of change, but the name of the argument is the argument from change. So the best answer here really is the third way, the argument for possibility and necessity, or from possibility and necessity. So that was a trick one, I know. I didn't make it, but technically the student's correct. What work by Plato recounts the defense speech of Socrates where he said the unexamined life is not worth living? The Allegory of the Cave, the Apology, Parmenides, or the works of Plato? Nice. 8 of you got that correct. It is the Apology. Okay. Bonus just still in the lead there. Which group of philosophers sought natural explanations for the origin and composition of the universe? The pre-Socratics, the Socratics, Roman philosophers, or the post-Socratics? The pre-Socratics. Very good, guys. Next. True or false? Epistemology is the study of knowledge. Two got it wrong. What? Alright, 7 you got it correct. Okay. Let's see if any... Oh, you all stayed in the same position. Interesting. True or false? Another one. Aristotle says we are political animals, which is why we live in communities. True or false? True. You were divided on that. 5-5. Okay. What does it mean to say that something exists in understanding? Oh, this one's a hard one. A concept that is present within somebody's mind must physically exist, or a concept present with one's mind but not necessarily having to exist, a concept physically exists in the world but isn't present in the mind, or a concept that neither exists in the mind or the real world. That's a hard one. Good on this student. Wow, you got it. A concept present within someone's mind but not necessarily having to exist, obviously outside the mind. The student had said that's, I guess the answer is when you put them in, that's about as much words as you can get in there. So that one stumped a lot of students in class too. All right. 16. What are the implications of Plato's world of forms for knowledge and perception? This is probably going to be another hard one. Knowledge and perception are the same thing and can be interchanged. Perception comes purely from knowledge. Knowledge cannot be gained only from perception. We don't have full truth. Or knowledge comes purely from perception. This is Plato's theory of forms and knowledge. Knowledge cannot be gained from our perceptions. Our perceptions are illusions for Plato. You gotta use your mind. Which of the following ways does Anaximander's concept of arche challenge Thales' idea of arche? Thales' idea was to expand on Anaximander's idea for the arche. Water isn't enough, and they agreed being is different from beings. Anaximander said water was too specific for the arche, where Thales' idea was neither challenged nor expanded on with Anaximander's ideas. Water isn't different enough. I don't know what that even means. And they agreed being is different from beings. I don't know. I don't get that one. All right, next. Which philosopher's logos was extraordinarily influential because it could be explained using terms? I think they mean arche. But maybe logos. Is it Plato? Aristotle, Aquinas, or Thales? Using terms. Huh. Weird, huh? Thales. I don't know about that one. See, once in a while you get ones that I don't know if that's true. I don't think so. Sorry about that. Anyways, next. What is the cave a metaphor for in Plato's allegory of the cave? The human mind and ignorance, the earth, afterlife, or the government? Alright, human mind and ignorance. Okay, good. Next. True or false? The shadows on the walls of Plato caves are reality. False is the correct. It's when false is the correct answer. Which philosopher's arche was the elements? All four of them: fire, earth, water, and air. Empedocles, Pythagoras, Heraclitus, or Deocritus? Empedocles. Man, everybody picked Heraclitus. His arche was change or fire. We're almost done. Which theory of time and space did Newton have? Relative, actual, absolute, or philosophical? Absolute. Good job. All right. Almost finished with this, and then we'll go and do our Q&A discussion, because this is just some fun. This is icebreaker, brain warmer. Which one of these is not one of Aristotle's four causes? Material, final, formal, or causal? Nice. Causal. Remember, Aristotle's four causes are material, formal, efficient, and final. Not causal. There's not one of them in there. All right. Second to last, true or false. The word philosophy means love and knowledge. Kind of a tricky one here. A little trick in this. No, it's love of wisdom, not love and knowledge. So the correct answer is false. Last one. Let's see who wins it. Was this class fun? Let's see what this... I want to see what the students put for... Oh, I guess any answer is correct on that. Let's see who's... All right. Runners up, Mongo and Vigo. Laffer is the winner, then Quantum Hoop, Tien at second, and alright, let me get out of this and we'll go to the Q&A. Good job, guys. Let's see. I feel like I'm Jay Dyer. You gotta have a Jay Dyer. Uh-oh. Alright, what are you guys doing in the chat here? The government. Anyway, so that was one of them. You get the idea. The Jeopardy. Maybe later in the stream we'll play the Jeopardy. What do you say? The Jeopardy's fun. The epistemological Jeopardy. Did you guys enjoy that? My wife said no. I could hear. Or keep it down in there. What do we got? Let me just look and see what's going on in the chat here. So anyways, you get an idea of kind of the stuff that we'd covered. That was the intro to philosophy, also known as philosophical perspectives. And it's just a great way to like finish up the semester in a fun way. But, you know, leaving the students with, you know, it's so easy. You could read and study all this stuff and then just forget it. So I thought that was a good way to kind of solidify and for them to depart, finish up the course, and take something with them that will last, and they just won't forget about it. So I'm glad all of you enjoyed playing the game too. Let's see, I'm just going to check any more super chats. You guys interested later after we do some more discussion? We'll do epistemological Jeopardy. Now that one will be a little bit harder. How do I do... I'll have to figure out how to do that. Like, I guess I'll have to look in the chat. Is there a way you can actually sign up in the Jeopardy and play it?
So
I don't know. It's a good... Okay, so what else? You guys have any questions before we go into... Leonardo has a good question. We'll answer that. Inquiring to orthodoxy and coming from a nihilistic, hedonistic path from before, antag makes logical sense logically, but psychological state still wavers. Will it become better inside the church? Absolutely. I was talking to another orthodox philosophy professor friend, and then because this issue a question like this came up, and I talked to them about it. And I basically said, the question was, do you have any doubts in orthodoxy? And I'm like, no. Prior to orthodoxy, I did. And the reason why is because I approached religion and God propositionally and through philosophy in the system I built prior to becoming Orthodox. And I was wrong about stuff. It was mediated through systems and philosophies and different stuff like that. And the fact that I'd been wrong about stuff, of course I had doubts. I'm like, what if I don't get it? What if this argument... I see it online all the time too, like, Father Deacon Ananias, how do we answer this? What if this? So somebody has this critique, and why don't you ever, is it interesting to all of you that I don't actually feel that I have to answer those? Why? Well, first of all, most of them are dumb objections. Omar, I'll get to yours, because that's just patently false. That God's a necessary condition for knowledge is not assumed without justification. It's actually argued to. So this just shows that either people don't understand how arguments work, or they're purposely being what's the word I want to use? Obtuse. Because that premise too is argued for by impossibility of the contrary. So either they're just too low IQ to understand arguments, and they should just probably stay away from philosophy, or they have some sort of vice in which they're purposely trying to misrepresent your argument or state something false. So I'll address that. But why is it that I don't have any doubts when it comes to orthodoxy is because, unlike a kind of Western appeal, a Western approach where everything's kind of legalistic and systematic and algorithmic and stuff like that, orthodoxy is experiential. And so the way that we know God is not through our intellect, but it's through our heart, our nous, the heart of hearts. Experientially, the way that you would know a person. I tell people that tomorrow my wife and I are celebrating our 17th year anniversary, and I know her. Not propositionally or intellectually. I can say true things about her propositionally and intellectually, but that's not how I know her. I know her through 17 years of marriage, ups and downs, hardships, in an intimate way, immediate, not mediated through any system. I don't put her properties and actions through a scientific calculator and then oh, well, this is how and I don't have any doubts about who my wife is, or if she's in the room, or the things that I know about my wife. And I feel that God's the same way. That after spending time in Orthodoxy with the saints, with Christ, the Mother of God, and seeing how God works, and God being known through the heart, The intellect can then is emergent phenomenon out of knowing God experientially in the heart. Then what do you call it? Of course there's no doubts. It's like any more than... So when you're first coming to orthodoxy, you're going to have doubts because you're still in that system of thinking that I know things primarily through the intellect. But when you start to live the experience and through the sacraments and receiving the divine energies of God, then it removes all the doubt, and you change ontologically. You participate in the energies of God. It begins to change you, and you see things differently. Anyways, I hope so. That those doubts will go away. Why we couldn't be a brain in the vat? Because God made sure we're not a brain in a vat. That's why. You're not going to be... This is why it all goes back to divine revelation. Like, you can't... And that's what I use in my... I'll use skeptical stuff. I'm like, from an autonomous position, you won't be able to answer. How do we know for sure? It's like... And even Descartes, I have critiques of his arguments, but that's exactly... At least Descartes knew the only way to guarantee that is if we can demonstrate God exists. And that God's an all-good, loving God and wouldn't let that happen. Even he generally realizes... That's the only way that you can overcome these kinds of challenges. Okay. So, Omar, does that make sense? The whole thing was either accident. Premise 2 is either it has to do with... Let me see if I can pull it up. 1 second. Just so I have here. So one of the things, the reason why I wrote this out is, so first when I talked about tag, I talked about generally what a transcendental argument is and how to generally demonstrate. I put the transcendental argument into a modus ponens. If knowledge exists and God exists, because I need people to understand what's logically going on in the argument. Of course, there's details to this. So then people are like, well, that's assumed, like, they're critiquing the... I'm like, look, do you understand generally what's going on, right? Nobody's saying that when I put the modus ponens, that's all there is to it. There's just nothing more to... No. And then I also put in the disjunct. So then some people were like, why is it orthodoxy? Why can't it be some other? And so I was like, look, if you want me to, in a summary of and cover all the kind of points, and again, each premise is supported by something else too, but generally this is how the structure would go. These people are never satisfied. By the way, notice they have no justification to say, make any of these objections. That's the first thing you should point out. But like, oh, really? You just made this up that like there's no justification for premise 2. Let's see. I pop this up. So I wrote all these steps out. And they're still not happy. I don't understand how they're rejecting premise 2. So it's either theonomous epistemology or it's autonomous epistemology. You can't object to that. There's no third way there. Number 2, if autonomous epistemology is true, so the way I define that is, how does Russ Manning put that? I think I've explained it elsewhere. Starting from man himself, his own ideas, apart from divine revelation. So notice it's already put in antithesis, right? Where man in the world and his understanding of the world is the starting point, epistemologically. and story about what you can know, that would be autonomous. The other one is realizing, look at the contour. That's why premise 2 is, premise 1 is you can't object to it. It's the opposite. I can't, from my own position, isolated within my own sphere of reasoning, where I'm question begging and epistemic bootstrapping and building a system from no justified criteria, and I have no justification for my justification, I admit I cannot actually solve the epistemic dilemma that I am. And the only other way is theonomous epistemology, a surrender, right? God says, you humble yourself, he exalts you. That's theonomous. Okay, so you can't object to number 1. You can't object to number 2 either. These are just definitionally true. If autonomous epistemology is true, then it's possible to make second-order claims, like knowledge exists. Because that's when I say, like, autonomous epistemology is making all kinds of claims that knowledge exists, and they believe that they're justified in that. So there's nothing objectionable about it. If autonomous epistemology is true, right, if that project can work, then obviously it's at least possible to make claims like knowledge exists. By admitting that it's possible that God doesn't exist. Okay? Now, later, what I'm going to say is the necessary conditions for the possibility of knowledge. So, this is just definitional, right? You don't have to agree that God is the necessary condition. I'm just putting that. I'm just saying that it's possible that God doesn't. Now, I put this in here to show that because autonomous epistemology is not possible, because accidentalism is, something different than autonomous epistemology. I'll just explain it. There's a reason why I put this in. It's not begging the question. All right. Premise 3, if autonomous epistemology is possible, then it's possible that revelatory theism is false. Again, just definitionally true. Now, here's an exclusive disjunction. Here is what allows us to put this in here. Here is going to take what the it's going to show that the definition of autonomous epistemology and the rejection of presuppositions is self-contradictory. It's through premise 4. Because there's only one way to go. It's either God, revelatory theism, or it's not. It's not God. That's an exclusive disjunction. So either P or not Q, or not P or not Q. And the reason why is because you can have disjunctions that aren't exclusive. Okay, premise 5. And this is just definitionally, not God is accidentalism. 6, accidentalism makes knowledge impossible, since there's no accidental knowledge. People never seem to get this, but that just shows their ignorance. Have you never picked up an epistemology book? I mean, every definition of knowledge includes at least, there could be more, there could be a fourth condition, a true justified belief. And as I'll read to you here from Duncan Pritchard, why knowledge, right? Justification excludes accidentally getting something right. He says merely getting it right. He says, there is in fact very good reason why epistemologists do not rest content with the mere true belief as an account of knowledge. And that is, one can gain true belief entirely by accident. In which case it would be of no credit to you at all that you got things right. Consider Harry, who forms his belief that the horse Lucky Lass will win the next race purely on the basis of the fact that the name of the horse appeals to him. Clearly, this is not a good basis, there's the notion of justification right there, on which to form one's belief about winning. Right? There's no actual connection there, so it's not a good reason or a basis or warrant that Lucky Lass will be the next horse winner of the horse race. Since whether or not the horse's name appeals to you has no bearing on its performance, correct? Suppose, however, that Harry's belief turns out to be true, i.e. accidentally, and that Lucky Last does win the next race. Is this knowledge? Intuitively not, since it's just a matter of luck or accident that his belief was true in this case. Remember that knowledge involves a kind of success that is credible to the agent. Crucially, however, success that are merely down to luck or accident are never credited to. All right, so he goes on and like every other epistemologist does, and it's like, yeah, true belief can never be enough for knowledge, because getting things right by accident or luck, obviously, is everybody will acknowledge that's not knowledge. So if your two ultimate principles that you have to appeal to, right? Either there's an intentional God that creates the world, right? It's not accident. There's purpose and intention behind it. That's an ultimate epistemic principle by which you explain everything else. Laws, morality, identity over time. If you don't hold to that, you have to admit the possibility of the contrary. What's the opposite category of, I did this on purpose. I had an intention to do this. No, you didn't. It was an accident. That means the only other category is accidentalism if you do not accept revelatory theism. So you have to explain everything in terms of accident, accidental meaning, accidental knowledge. And as you see, that term accident precludes the terms knowledge and meaning and law, as I just read in Duncan Pritchard, all exclude accident. So you're involved in like a performative contradiction. Accidental knowledge, accidental laws of physics, accidental meaning. So it's self-defeating. So premise 6, accidentalism makes knowledge impossible since there is no accidental knowledge, right? So because of the disjunction, premise 4, by impossible the contrary, it must, however, let's see, premise 8, if not God, not revelatory, is false, the defeater of knowledge any possible, then, right, in the disjunctive, then God, revelatory theism must be true. So that principle then has to be the principle, if we go back up here to premise 2, the meaning of one of the notions of God is the necessary condition for knowledge. Because it's either God's necessary or not God. Do you see? That's why I put it in the bracket. Now, why is that important? Because if we come to, yeah, that's the only possibility. So it's not begging the question. That's part of the meaning of God. God must be the necessary condition of the possibility of knowledge. But premise 10, however, if God, revelatory, is the only necessary condition, right, by impossibility of the contrary, as we see in the exclusive disjunction, now I'm back up. This gives context to the meaning of what autonomous epistemology is. What was the definition of autonomous epistemology? That I can be justified in saying knowledge exists while acknowledging that it's possible that God doesn't. But because it's proven here that God is the necessary conditions for the possibility of knowledge, autonomous epistemology becomes self-contradicting. Because it's saying, what? It's possible that the only necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge is not right. It's both possible the necessary condition of knowledge exists, and it's possible that it does not exist. That's what autonomous epistemology leads. That's a contradiction. So autonomous epistemology is false. However, if autonomous epistemology is false, then revelatory theism must be true by the disjunctive. If revelatory theism is true, then it is God revealed as Trinity, or God reveals something. Okay, I'm going to stop there and go into, but I'm going to see if that helps explain that these people don't know what they're talking about. where I don't understand what it says. Something being universally demonstrated doesn't make it invalid. Yeah, so you got that correct. Premise 2 is, well, I explained it. James asks a question. I have trouble understanding uncreated energies, saying they're uncreated just means they proceed from... No, they are God. They do proceed from God, but they're not just... They're not like Neoplatonic emanations or something. They're actually God. How do we know that? Only God's uncreated. So they're not simply effects of God. They are God. So maybe that helps. They're God's uncreated eternal actions and ideas. And you can say, well, where do they proceed or come from? These energetic processions, as we call them. They come from the essence of God. But it doesn't mean, it's not an either or, that which proceeds from God is not God. Otherwise, you'd have to deny the Trinity, correct? The Son eternally begotten of the Father, and the Holy Spirit eternally proceeds from the Father. Doesn't mean they're not God, like they're fully God. So likewise with the energies, they are God. They're just not his essence. There's God in himself, and then there's God outside of his essence, right? His energetic processions. So just think about that they're actually God, and they're actually distinct. They proceed from, so they're eternally connected, just like the Son's eternally the Son of the Father. But they're not mere effects, or they're not mere processions. They're actually God. His eternal uncreated actions, his eternal ideas. Okay, moving on. Let's see if we have any super chats. I think we do. Jonathan Kelly, thank you, brother. Donates $10. If you want to follow God's will and you pray to discern, how can you be certain that you're following God's will and not your own? And you're just deceiving yourself or deceived by demons. That's a great question. And so, a couple different answers to that. Lean not on your own understanding is what Scripture says. And so we're also told God resisteth the proud. If you humble yourself, he exalts you. So one way is through the pathway of humility and not leaning on your understanding. Well, how does that look in the real world? Well, that's to hold myself in suspicion, which you already have, Jonathan, in the question in the super chat here. I don't trust myself. So what do? I trust people who are better than me, who are more experienced than me. And part of this has to, we could say it's something akin to kind of the ancient virtue ethics or virtue epistemology, that there is no formula for how do we know. And I think that's the most frustrating thing. And this is the greatest way to kind of demonstrate the difference between the East and the West. And I don't mean East and West geographically. I had, I'll talk about what Father Russell always says. And that is, he asks the question, whether Christ, Eastern or Western? Eastern. Now, it happens to be geographical, but I'm going to guide you through that. There is a mindset, right? And one could be born in a different geographical location from east or west, and have a different mindset, either Eastern or Western. That's what I'm going to say. But okay, so what Christ, Eastern. The apostles, Western or Eastern? Eastern. Okay. And you start thinking through this, it's not just a geography. When we say Eastern or Western, Father Russell says to be Eastern is simply to be human. The West is an aberration. I don't mean everything in the West or the geography or something like that. There was a certain kind of mindset and experiment that started to emerge, and it happens to be in the geography of the West, but again, orthodoxy is present in the West. Ireland was Orthodox. Norway was Orthodox. So it's not simply restricted to that. I'm just telling you that's where the names come from. Just like you might get the name continental philosophy. Where the heck is my book here? That I'm trying to show you. Did I move it? 1 second. Urgh. After God. Lord, help me find... Watch this. Saint Mina, help me find, interceding for the Master, help me find my book, After God, by Engelhardt. Amen. After God. Huh. Every time. Thank you. Thank you, St. Minas. He talks about this too. If I read... I think I have it memorized. You certainly get this typified like in the Enlightenment and modernity, and that's what basically he's talking about. And there was a nice quote in here where it's like, Christianity did not begin in philosophy, right? The faith was much deeper. Let me see if I can find this quote. I'm butchering the quote. This is really good. I should come back and read. All right, I'm just going to finish my thought here. So, if I had to mark, what is the aberration, the Western experiment that really Tristan Engelhardt talks about? This is a severing knowledge. It's an autonomous. What he's really talking about is autonomous epistemology, where, look at it. He says, what is autonomous epistemology for Tristan Engelhardt's point of view? Something after God, right? Where you're first. Your ideas in the world are first. And Tristan Engelhardt says, we are after God. That is, the dominant secular culture is deaf and blind to God's existence. The result is that in eschewing, so this would definitely be, even if you're a believer, right, it's which one's first. That's all Tag's always ever been. It's just trying to point people to God, that God is first in all things, ontologically, morally, epistemically, in terms of your life, and should be immediate. That is what it means to be Eastern. That's what people are like, there's nothing that's tag in the fathers. I'm like, all tag is a reorientation and putting things in the right place, that God's first in all things. And if I make myself, after God, where I put myself first, no, God, I'll build my system and then I'll prove you by my philosophy and arguments. The result is what you certainly see epitomized in modernity, eschewing a God's eye perspective. What does it, Russ Manning always say? The impossibility of the contrary from what we could not actually do. Man cannot give a coherent account of a theory of knowledge, or justification for his justification criterion. We must hand it over to God's eye point of view. Hand it over to God. Help me. And in humbling yourself, he exalts you. But the opposite way is what Tristan Mangelhardt talks about in eschewing a God's eye perspective. Morality, bioethics, the state, we could say epistemology as well, and the meaning of life are all approached as if everything came from nowhere. We're going nowhere, and for no enduring or ultimate purpose. Nietzsche talked about this unhinging from, right? In the gay science, that from that first principle. I'm trying to read some more. I could actually pull up the paper. Anyways, to go back to your question, this is what the West is. Then knowledge becomes something up here. It becomes propositional, becomes systematic, becomes legalistic, algorithmic. It becomes universal, right? You certainly see this in like a universal morality, a universal politics, something we all could access through, and they become obsessed. You certainly see the Western aberration, the philosophical project culminate in modernity and the Enlightenment. And I was talking with my friend Dr. Mark Bernier, and he was like, notice what they talk about. They're obsessed with two words in Enlightenment and modernity: law. The law-like structures of law and reason, right? Everything's formulas. From Descartes to Kant, right? Everything becomes abstractionism, is Dr. Seraphim Fultz says. A Platonic system of rules in your own head that aren't grounded and connected to anything. And so we approach everything as kind of your question, Jonathan. How can we be sure? In one sense, your question reveals desire for a formula. How do I know? What formula can I punch this through? What philosophical system will explain when I'm being deceived and when I'm not? Nothing. They won't. There is no formula. There's no answer to that. And in this sense, it's apophatic. That's the negation of everything that I want to say is in the West. But notice what the other alternative is. It's the East. To know, as Scripture says, he knew her. Doesn't mean he read her resume, or, well, I just calculated Maxim, and then I, universalized it, and then that's how I know my way. Well, Scripture says he knew that intimately, immediacy, not through propositions, not because he read a resume, because, forgive my language, because they knocked boots. A mystical knowing. Now, in the West, mystery means, and mystical, unknown. In the East, it means known, but can't necessarily be explained or exhausted through explanation or reduced to explanations. He knew her. but couldn't explain her. That's the Eastern way. So how do you know? Well, you acquire the virtues of Christ, the spiritual virtues. Okay. And then, because where does doubt lie? Not here. Doubt's up here. That's all the logos. But what about this? And how do I know if I didn't get my proposition correct? And if I didn't construct my system? And what if this? And what if... All the what ifs and doubts do not occur in the nous, in the heart. They occur in the intellect. And it just won't shut up. It won't stop doubting. St. Augustine says, I have a restless heart, right? Now until I find rest in thee. He's probably talking more of the mind. Mine won't shut up and find any rest until I find rest in thee, St. Augustine says. Now, how do we find that? Well, there's different ways, right? You mature, you become a different type of person. And that's what faith is. The initial movement of faith is trust. It's not intellectum. It's not cogitare in Latin, to think through intellectually. It's to trust. And the trust gives an immediacy like the infinite has with the mother. But begins through faith to deliver a noetic knowledge. Because when you trust somebody, you enter into a relationship with them, and there's an immediacy, and you begin to know them. Not mediated through intellect and propositions and formulas, as the West would have it, but in the heart. And you're granted what the mind or autonomous epistemology or the autonomous mind couldn't actually achieve and know. Then the stuff in the mind, do you see, we're not putting our mind first, we're putting our heart and Christ first. And the relationship with Christ in the movement of faith. Faith delivers what intellectual cognition cannot. And then it's delivered up to the intellect. And then the doubts go away. Then you'll be able to see, like, is this God's will? Now, part of that, too, is obedience. And putting yourself, when you start off, obviously you don't have the virtues and the experience. You're just starting off in the faith. You haven't gained the noetic knowledge necessary to make the discernments. So what do? You have spiritual fathers. You have a priest. That's why I start with doubt of myself. I'm probably in prelist. Like, I'm probably not thinking through this correctly, that this is God's will. So what do? I go to my spiritual father. I go to my priest here, Father Russell, who is my confessor. I go to the multiple clergy advisory board, right? The multiple priest friends that have obviously more experience and virtues than me. And notice they were like, no, that's not God's will. Or that is. I believe it is. I believe it's good. Well, what happens when they all speak in one voice? It seemed good to us and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's present. And I learned from my teachers. I learned from my advisory board, from my spiritual father. And I began to acquire a mindset like them, of which they acquired the mindset of the fathers in the church and of the Holy Spirit. And so that's how I start with not trusting myself, lean not on my own understanding. I do my prayers, I go to confession, take the sacraments, but I live in a community, and I live in a way in which I'm in a mentorship, and I go to my spiritual father and I ask, right? Somebody who has it, but there's no formula, you see. It's hard work, and you have to put yourself in this kind of relationship or mentorship and being a neophyte and under obedience of somebody that's wiser and smarter, that's acquired more of the spiritual virtues. Then you'd be able to see, like, this is God's will. but I didn't lean on my own understanding. Does that help? I think it's a great question. So, the other way is the Western experiment. And yes, you can be Western without being Western. Get it? There's great things in the culture of the West. Most of us are born in the West. You should be proud of that. That's good. I'm talking about the Western philosophical experiment, the after God that Tristan Englehart's talking about, the quantitative, propositional only way to knowledge, the Enlightenment modernity experiment. No, you don't have to be. You can be Western without embracing that. You can be Western and be Eastern. Be Eastern is to be human. Right? That's the way that you were designed to be. Again, the Western is a philosophical experiment gone awry, an aberration from what it means to be human, the way that God created you. That's why we say Eastern Orthodox. And yes, you can be Eastern Orthodox and be Western. All right? Case closed. Very good question. Let's see if we have any more. Justin Henley asks, have Montana just gone on sale yet, Father? Great question. $20. Not yet. I just talked to some of the organizers on the conference board, and I'm just going through initial projected costs. It's going to be more. We're obviously going to be paying more for more stuff. It gets better and better each year, and so I'm just trying to calculate the tickets. I'm thinking they'll probably be about maybe $10 more, but I have to make a projected initial costs and then set the ticket price. But they should. I'll definitely have them on sale before January. All right, let's see. Yes, all knowledge. So limited hangout. Don't you ultimately have to trust that God's divine revelation is telling us the truth? Yes. You will never find anything in life, even in any of the philosophers, that doesn't rely on trust. There's nobody that gets out of the trust game. Okay? What was my article? The question. So, and let no one fear death. The article that I wrote for this chapter 6. In whom do you, or what do you put your trust? That's the question. Notice secular man or autonomous epistemology, guess where they put their trust? Reason trusts in its reasonableness. Don't you have to... You can't prove everything. Like, what comes first? Logical proofs and argumentations? Reason? Or trust? Trust. There's no logical proof for logical proofs, right? Or like, how do you prove that reasonable is reasonable? Reason takes faith and trust that it's reasonable. So, Clement of Rome and many other, there's a lot of fathers that talk about this too. Now, he uses the word belief, not in the sense of mental assent, but trust. I believe so that I may know, not know so that I may believe. There's no way around that. You will not be able to get anywhere near knowledge if you don't start with trust. Now, the problem is, obviously, you put yourself in, you're trusting the wrong things. Why trust coffee is my epistemic. What does coffee do? Does a proposition, by the way, do the work? No. So we can reflect intellectually, just like that's what tag's doing. This, it's, you know, it's not fideism. Fideism would say, like, well, they're two separate spheres, faith and reason. And then, they just do entirely different things, and you can't think about faith, because faith's entirely different. Well, no, we don't believe that. We believe that, yeah, it has to start with faith. But I can hand that over, just like I've talked about. I can hand the things over where I start in my right brain over to the left brain and back over to the right brain. I can talk about, like, we can look through intellectually and explore these ideas, just like, yeah, okay, we all start with faith. Well, can I think about this intellectually and philosophically, that putting your faith in the wrong sort of things would be self-defeating, incoherent, stuff like that? Yeah. So that there's a reasonableness to the faith in the divine revelation, and it's the only reasonableness. What did Russ Mannion say? There is no purely rationalistic argument for theism. There's only a theistic account of rationality. That's it. So there's nothing else to be said. This is why you can't give these people, like, well, that's not supported and that's not justified, that's not acceptable. Like, you have no reason to say any of that. You're just making a bunch of noise. And we got to quit giving these people freebies, unjustified freebies. We're like, you're not in a position to say any of that stuff and object. Well, you haven't proven God by my arbitrary standard. There is no pure rational proof for the existence of God. There's only a theistic account of rationality and proofs. That's the way you got to think about it. Yes, we all start with trust, and that's the only thing that could possibly work. Good question. Nice, Dave. Yeah, you'll enjoy that book. And when I was in San Antonio, I actually stayed at the Engelhard Ranch. He's since passed away, but that's where I was actually staying with Father Julian and Beatessa Dorothea and their family. Of course, Susan Engelhard lives there, and it was good to see her. Paradox, just like doxa, a belief that there's sort of kind of a tension between that you don't really know how to explain. A contradiction is something very specific. It's affirming and denying a subject or something in the same manner of speaking at the same time. So, paradox could be resolved. There's just kind of a tension. It may have the appearance of appearing to be a contradiction, but not. It may just be an unresolvable tension, but no contradiction. It's just beyond. I can't explain it. Paradoxes take multiple forms. But paradox is not necessarily a paradox isn't necessarily a contradiction. It's not a category error. It's not a. Anyways, let's see. Pounds created unit kilograms. I don't think so. I think they're societal. They're what's the word I want to use? Conventional. There's no universal form of pounds or kilograms, as far as I know. Now they might derive from kind of a more general universal, but as far as divisions and measurements, I think that's a convention. There's nothing kind of objective and mind independent of of that. And it's not like, there's not like, oh, I tripped over a kilogram. Right? You can't find a kilogram or a meter and outside of the mind. It's the mind's measurement, conventional measurement. Uh-oh, let's see. My YouTube went down. Get me back up 1 second. Yeah, that's a good. You can contradict yourself, but it's hard to paradox yourself. That's a great. Here's another one that I thought was fantastic. That when people are always like, "That's an ad hominem." You said I was stupid. Not every attack on a person's character is an ad hominem. So here's what somebody explained. This is the difference between an ad hominem and not an ad hominem concerning attacks on people. You're stupid, so your argument's stupid. And it has to be false, ad hominem. Your argument's stupid, therefore you're stupid. Not ad hominem. Contradiction. You can contradict yourself, but you can't paradox yourself. Oh, Jonathan Kelly, God bless you. $50. Thank you for answering the question from earlier. It was very helpful. Yeah, Merry Christmas. Early Christmas too. We can start saying it now. Christ is born. A voice cries. Hold on a second. Is there a good reason not to trust it? Yeah, that's a Vigo. Great point. So notice what I said, like, it's the only reasonable way is putting your trust in God and his revelation. Not because you start with reason or God's bound by reason and systems, but there is no other way. Reason and reasonableness and logic and all these things come from God. So, of course, it's reasonable and logical to put your trust in God. But you start with God first, and then it grounds logic and reason. I don't put logic and reason first. I mean, I do in order of time, but not epistemically or ontologically. And then be like, well, I have to determine. That's what the problem is in all the questions that we ask. How do I know? Well, there is nothing independent out there beyond God, higher than God, independent of God, by which you would know God is trustworthy. That's just the only thing. That's why the Russmanian quote's so great. That's to suggest there's like a purely rationalistic proof or a rationalistic way of knowing God. There isn't. That would suggest there's something higher, independent of God. There's only a theistic account of rationality, proofs, and logic. Great way. Just totally puts the priorities in its right place. So that's what tag is. The fact that, so you're asking where's tag in the church? That's what tag is. The fact that I can put it formally and explain it more in kind of left brain analytic, right? That's not actually what tag is. That's just putting in words and arguments what's prior to what I'm trying to get you to see. So there is no formal tag argument anywhere in the Fathers. Why? Because tag's prior to formal arguments of tag. So what is tag? Christ is God and Lord. He's first in all things. That there's nothing independent or higher than God. That is all over that's all the Fathers in Scriptures is. Okay, how I explain that to people and what words or language that I use, I could if I decide to put in Romanian, that's not what the argument is. So if that helps, never orthodox enough. Now the difficulty is, I can't get out. How do I point to what the ground of semantics, words, logic, and arguments actually is without using argument and words? I do. But in the argument too, what I'm saying formally, and this is why I don't need to find a modus ponens, because modus ponens is not what tag is. Modus ponens points out to tag, right? So if you want to know, the question is, I have to figure out what your question. Are you asking where a modus ponens is, or the word transcendental argument, or what the transcendental argument actually is? That's all over the fall. What the transcendental argument actually is that's all the fathers talk about. But I would suggest, if you want to actually see the clearest way where you see this in the fathers, St. Justin Popovich on St. Isaac's, the Syrian's theory of knowledge. That's tag. St. Isaac the Syrian explains that this is what all the fathers think. So, good question. Yeah, a formal structure, the way that I write a story or something like that, is not the thing itself. So we have to think about the mode of signification, reference, and stuff like that. Are you talking about where are the words or the signifiers, or the thing that it's pointing out? Because the words really aren't important. This is like the same thing. Like, well, where's the word Trinity in? That's exactly it. The Protestant objection. Where's the word? Not the Protestant, but Unitarian. Where's the word Trinity in the Bible? So there's no Trinity. Nobody in the Bible believed in the Trinity because the word Trinity isn't in there. It's the word concept. Well, the word Trinity is not the important part of the signification and proposition. It's the thing that's pointing out. Is the Trinity present? Not is the word present. Like, which one's more important? The Trinity or the word pointing out the Trinity? Science says 50 miles to Butte, Montana. If somebody knocked down that sign, would Butte, Montana not be 50 miles from me or wherever? I don't know what the mileage is, but you get the idea. No, it'd still be there. So what's more important? The sign Butte's 50 miles or the fact of the matter? So I don't need the sign. I don't need the fathers. What's more important? The modus ponens pointing out the transcendental deduction, pointing out God is first in all things? Or God is first in all things? Which one's more? So just because you may not see them using the particular sign, and we could come all kinds of, I could create a different sign, doesn't mean the argument's not there. Because the argument is what's prior to argument. It's Christ. It's the Holy Trinity. It's orthodoxy. That's all the tag is. And so the fact that people collapse the sign and the thing signified, the referencing and the referent, is what one of the problems is, to have a word concept fallacy. That's why also there's no critique of tag. You could critique the words I used, or maybe the way I formulated. I'm like, okay, I didn't express it. But the very fact that it's pointing something that's beyond argument, that's beyond words, right? How could that ever be, like, which one's first? Butte or the sign? Which one's first? God or the argument? So if my particular construction of the modus ponens, or however, the 19 premises, something was wrong. I'm like, oh well, okay, like I'll fix it and draw the best sign. Make it right. But the reference always, it's pointing to something, it's getting you to realize something. It's like, yeah, but I get it. There's no other way they could be do. And this is the fullness of revelation. It's there. We start with the given. Like, it's there. It's like, and then you can think about it. Does this make sense? I'm going to put my trust in it. What does the Trinity make sense? What would the opposite or another view be, right? You can think about it. The two spheres are not separate from one another. We're not called to be irrationalists or fideists. Great questions. Jordan, 999, thank you for all your work. I'm currently struggling with spiritual discipline. I have no problem reading and learning about the faith, but lacking consistent quality of prayer. Any guidance? First, talk to your priest about that. But I say what the priests, my spiritual fathers, start slow and consistent. Can you do this? God always meets you where you're at. Can you do a prayer rule? What's my prayer? It's the bare minimum, right? My prayer rule is obviously, it's like what I begin all the prayers with: the Trisagion, the Our Father. Like, for example, depending on what time of the day, the three prayers with the morning prayers, the fourth prayer there, and usually I end with the Creed in Psalm 50. That's my prayer. Like, every morning before I even get out of bed, that's what. Then I come and I do the additional. Do these prayers every evening. If I do more, then it's icing on the cake. But again, now that might be even a lot for, like, the priest may just say, just do the Trisagion. Like, could you do that every day, 3 times a day? You build a discipline that I can do. It's not so hard to. Anything else just becomes extra. That's typically what they said. Like, so start small and consistent. Don't decide on your own. Work it out with your spiritual father. Have him give you a prayer rule. That's small, but I can do this. Because it seems ridiculous. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that's small enough. Of course I could do that. So that's what I would encourage. And then if, you fail, you go to confession. You're not going to be known as a Christian because you've sinned, but how many times did you get up, pick up your cross, and follow him when you fall? Let's see if we have any more. Oh, there was another topic that I wanted to talk to you about. It was kind of interesting. Oh, forgive me. Abject Fool donates $5. Are Protestants also subject to the is-ought problem? Or at least some version of it. Okay, I think I know what you're saying here. It's also known as the naturalistic fallacy. So there's the material naturalistic world just is. Yet we have another sphere of how ought things to be, how ought I to act. That's what's called the normative, and that's where ethics come in from. And epistemology too, because when we talk about veridicalness, like, is the proposition true? There's something, if you say, yes, it is. So I'm giving a description there, but then immediately becomes from that, is it opens up this other domain. Well, ought I to believe what's true? And everybody's like, yeah, you should. And therefore, holding a true belief for the right sorts of reasons, obviously not accidental reasons, but the right sort of reasons, implies a level of normativity that you ought to hold it for the right reason. You ought to believe what's true for the right reasons. And unfortunately, you just can't derive this from naturalism. Like, it's like intuitively built into us. And it's like, why do we have this? because I can't find it anywhere in the natural world. I couldn't derive an ought from an is. Now, the question about, so obviously naturals have a problem. In a different way, do Protestants have a problem? Yes, I think in the sense of normative authority, which for some reason they can't seem to understand what, they just confuse it with like norms or authority. By normative authority, we mean, is there a group of people that are endowed with the power of law, so that their decisions, notice this is a different question than the epistemological, they'll overlap, but it's a different category than the epistemological question of how we know. Normative authority is there a group of body of people that are endowed with the power of law such that their decisions bind everybody normatively. Like when we say law, you ought to pay this percentage on your tax. Why? Because that's the law. It's established. You ought to, I don't know, pick any law. It's not up to you. You can't just be like, well, I don't believe it. It's binding on you. It's like you could think that and say that, but you don't rise above the law. Was it Joseph Biden said? No man's above the law. Kid you not. Nobody would say, hey, I can't do the Biden impersonations, but you get the idea. We're asking that. That is the normative question, right? If there is a body, then you ought to, right? It's binding on. You ought to hold their decision on. You ought to. Now, how you know it's correct, or how you know something about the Bible, like, you know, it might imply, so, like it will, because that's part of the history of the church. But it's not reducible to that because there's two separate categories. But yeah, you'd know by looking at all the evidence. In fact, like, is it correct doctrine? Now, obviously, if you're not looking at all the evidence, doesn't that explain why? That's a possible explanation why you're getting things wrong. I didn't see all the evidence. I didn't take into effect the councils, the normative authority. Like, yeah, that could be a reason why. Now, do you have to accept normative authority, the ecumenical councils, to get the right interpretation of something in Scripture? Like, no. Obviously, I'd gotten the Trinity, like, this is my body, like the real presence. But in some sense, it's accidental, right? Despite how that was formed and all the evidence, I get it right. So I say you can, and I guess in a loose sense, it's like, can you know, but not really in the strict sense, because if the entire justification is the kataholos, the entirety of the church, including normative authority, then, like, obviously, no, you're not justified in, you got it right, but you don't know, like, there's kind of a second order, you don't know that. Anyway, so yeah, it does relate to, or they just attributed normative authority and the oughts to Scripture itself. But, like, that's just totally ahistorical and anarchical. Like, doesn't make any sense just semantically say a book can be a normative authority. Right? The supreme authority is the Constitution, but there's no legal body or justices. Because disputes are, people are going to read stuff differently. Like, how does the book won't do resolve that problem? So the Protestant God's really a strange God. I mean, here's the Protestant God always in my mind is that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give my infallible word. And that'll be the supreme authority. Like, oh, great, that sounds great. Like, well, when do we get this? Well, it's going to come in parts. Not everybody's going to have it. It's not even going to be, we're not even going to get somebody to have a complete list of it for, 400 years, 300 years. With St. Athanasius' Paschal letter, and then even then, not everybody's going to agree. Nobody really kind of knows which all the books of my word are going to be there, and that's not even. And it's going to be disputed and argued, and until this thing called the Council of Trullo, which, of course, will have no authority. It's just a man-made tradition. And so then we really don't even know anyways. But that'll be my word, and then I won't leave any legal body to resolve, not only to resolve the canon issue of what books are in there. I mean, obviously my word will just be self-attesting, and the words on the page will just do that for you, right? And then if there's any doctrinal disputes, well, I'm not going to obviously establish a group of people that has the power to resolve that. Each man for himself, and well, my words on the page are sufficient for. And I mean, how crazy is that? That's the most anarchical, like God, like what a. It's not very godlike. Like, why are we worshiping this God? I mean, that's how he decided to run it. Like. Anyways, Montana does mean mountain, by the way. There's a reason I call Montana. It is named after mountains. Good point. Here's a good limited hangout has a good question. When we say objective, don't we actually mean divine subjectivity, because everything in the world would all be evident? Yeah, so don't get confused too much on the word subject, because people are like, well, doesn't it make, if everything's grounded God and God's a subject, doesn't it make, that's not what makes something a subject. So, again, it has this notion of universally binding. So, typically, what we mean by something being subjective is the standard of truth that binds the truth. If subjectivity means me, the subject, I bind what's true, but for me, I'm the standard, but the standard doesn't apply to, I don't arise above my subjectivity. So that each person is their own standard, and there's no universally binding, right? Because they're all situated in their own subjectivity. They're finite, etc. It's their perspective and opinions. God is a subject is not like a human finite subject. God actually stands in a position to universally bind from his subject in a way that's like objects, that we would say it's objective. Because he created it all. He stands over and above. He is that by which they can ground the notion of law and is binding on everything. So, really, subjectivity and objectivity has to do with, like, is it binding beyond the person? Or is it just the person's truth for themselves at that time? Like, so it doesn't really have anything to do with the word subject in that sense. So people get that confused. Well, it's all subjective. God's, it's like, no, that's not what subjectivity means. Good question, though. Would you ever do a friendly debate discussion with Tim Gordon? I like Tim Gordon. Yeah, mate. Like, you know what I like about Tim? I think would be good about that, because I'm not the best Orthodox apologist against Roman Catholicism. I'm okay. I like Tim because I feel like he's the same way. Like, he's more in philosophy and maybe epistemology. So I think that would be good, Because again, I'm just not good at history. It's probably my memory. I'm not good at memory. What was it I said? I'm not good at memorizing. So I forget things. And that's why it's hard for me to kind of get into the details about, like, every letter and what happened to this. And I just see kind of more just kind of stepping back, like generally in terms of epistemological kind of positions. Like, is it systematically contradictory? Like, are there systemic problems that I approach epistemologically? I don't have to rely on my memory that way. And maybe people like that better, because if you saw, again, Ubi did a great debate with Eric, but people get lost in both of them, Eric and Ubi, are people that like to get into the details historically. That's not my jam. Like, I'm not good at it. I stay out of that. I can't remember all the stuff that Ubi. And so, however, the upshot of not getting into the details, again, all of that's kind of, all those quotes and quote mines, like, people saw that and be like, I don't know, it's so complicated. It's like, well, it's kind of a red herring. Like, it really doesn't have to do with those issues. I mean, those are kind of distractions. I mean, again, there's some pretty easy epistemic ways and generally way to see that, like, how's Roman Catholicism systematically contradicted themselves in terms, and what was being argued is for the autocracy of papal supremacy, and whether that was present in the first millennium. Well, one easy way is that, well, Rome just conceded. And the last two documents, Kyrie and Alexander, like, I don't even need to go into all the quote Mayan details. I can go into the epistemic and systemic problems with indefectibility. And then just all I have to do is find one point in history of, like, and that Pope's a heretic. That was another thing that is like a kill shot that the people missed. You're arguing for the indefectibility, and that the papal supremacy is being above the councils, that the Pope could ratify the councils, and the councils are beholden to the Pope and stuff like that. And then you admit Honorius is a heretic. Pope Vigilius is correct. Like, there's all these different... Takes 2 weeks for what am I blanking? In the Council of Chalcedon to review St. Pope Leo's tome. Like, why, if the Pope was binding on the council and not the other, like, why are they, like, there's some easy kind of, like, kill shots that I just wouldn't even go into the detail. I'd be like, that's, like, there's just some epistemic, like, contradictions and principles that are pretty straightforward. Maybe it's easier that way when I stay out of the history because I'm not good at remembering stuff, and just focus on, like, well, I can just see this epistemologically is incorrect. This is self-defeating or something like that. So, anyways, that's a good, yeah. Mark donates $20 and asks, does Ortho reject Aristotelian categories while cautioning against over-reliance on logic? Rejecting them entirely seems extreme. Since the Cappadocians use logic to defend, shouldn't they still have a place? I've never heard of any Orthodox rejecting Aristotelian categories. I wouldn't say that. Does it exhaust every, like again, for the most part, like, they're useful. If I brought up, I'll just share with you real quick something. Aristotle is spelled Erikstotle, Aristotle. So why would Orthodox reject my categories? You see, joking, bad joke. Documents. Aristotle. One second, I want to show you. want to show you something about Aristotle. We having fun? And educational time. I'll share screen just so we have. So everybody knows what we're talking about here. Capture. I want to go to is that showing up? So the question was, to Orthodox reject Aristotle's categories? No, I don't. But I don't think they have to squish everything in theology through the like. But think about it; it's pretty straightforward. This is a slide that I made. Being is not univocal. The word is not simply voces said in one way. It's equivocal. Well, how many ways? Well, as many ways as you can speak, right? As many of the ways that you can put this verb in of being is the ways in which something can be and exist. That's pretty straightforward. It doesn't seem weird. Although there are people that think being is univocal, but that's dumb. So, in all the ways that I could predicate or say something, right? So, if, like, for example, just the apple is right. What do I have there? I have a subject, verb, and then on this side is on the table, is green, is being thrown in the trash. Those are all predicates. Now, if I looked at those predicates and I asked, well, how do I categorize that? Aristotle believes 10 ways. I could say, an apple is, and define it in terms of a substance, just like a triangle is a three-side geometrical figure. It's kind of secondary substance. That's the kind of essential definition. Or primary, this apple here. But I could say, the apples, there are two apples. There are the apples weigh 100 pounds together or something like. But it's predicate in terms of quantity, like how much. Quality, does it taste good? Is it? I can predicate the way things can be. It could be in terms of relation. Double, half, less than, more than. On the table. Like, what ways can things be? Things can be in a classroom. They could be on a table. They could be in my mouth. They could be in Helena, Montana. Yesterday. Tomorrow. At 1:50 p.m. Like, so time is a way that something can be. Position. State. At rest. Moving. Action. Running. Walking. Affection. So throwing, being thrown. It seems like there's 10 ways. Kant has 12, right? Because he has causality and some other things. But I don't know why somebody would reject that. Like, it's fully exhaustive of everything? Like, no. But like, I just don't know why anybody would reject that. Did I share the screen? Yeah, I shared. So the problem is then. So we use like language in philosophy is useful. There's an uncreated aspect of logic. right? The ideas in the mind of God, the logi, and then a created kind of system based on the uncreated, right? Or, even objective things that are created, a kind of a logic, that Aristotelian logic, and non-Aristotelian logic, kind of formal logic and stuff like that. That's like, yeah, there's truth to it. Is it fully like, no, and it's useful and stuff like that. So we use those things. They reflect the created order, and as well the creator of the created order. And so I don't know why, but we wouldn't. The creator and his divine logic obviously transcend. They're not exhausted in the things that are created, even if they're objective. So, if I have to have a one-to-one course and reduce everything, there are things that are going to be problems in terms of like substance and accidents. Like when I try to explain the Eucharist or something like that, then you get like a Thomistic Roman Catholic view that it's problematic. Orthodox don't. Like, we can talk about a type of transubstantiation without having to like put it into Aristotelian categories of substance and accident. Be like, I don't know. It transcends that. It's enough to know that it actually is the body and blood of Christ, really, without having to squish it down into. That's basically the Orthodox view, but we're not anti-Aristotelian or anti-logic. Fathers, like I said, studied Aristotle. Aristotle got a lot of things right. Some things he got wrong. And we can say that. Yes, the questions along the Mars are sent to me. Let me see if we got any more, and then I'm going to share something with you. Pretty interesting. So just to sum up, my thank yous to Dave, my thank you to Jonathan Kelly, to Justin Henley for Abject Fool, again to Jonathan Kelly for that wonderful $50 super chat on top of his $10 that he had already given. Jordan, thank you, and Mark. St. Gregory Nazianzus, great name. Let me tell you the structure of the courses. I'm gonna just pull them up, right? Because there's different types of things, so I don't know exactly what you're interested in. Let's go to shop courses. And I'll probably update with new lectures too. Like when they get better, I put them on. Or you purchase that; it's already built in to the system. What I could do is just on top of as a free gift send the newest ones as well on top of. But let me just show you what I'm talking about. Here in the Patristic Faith store, you'll notice, and there's a couple different options. You can get a third course. If you just want an individual, just write me, and I'll give you the price for. But the third course is nice because if people don't want to spend the entirety of. And remember, these are already discounted. I brought these prices down. And obviously, the more you get, the greater the discount. But for example, if you click on this, it gives the description. And maybe you want to get a taste of this before you actually purchase a full. Now, let me see something. I can show you what it looks like from. I'm going to come here and just show you. You can't see this from your end. Like, this is what you would. I'm going to go in through the back end here and then show you. Let's see. Through the apps Course Plus here. And again, you don't see this, but I'm going to show you if you purchase, this is what you would actually find. My courses, let's go here. What's going on? I should be able to just get into my products maybe. Let's see. Okay, yeah, here we go. Sorry. Okay, so if you purchased one of these, shoot, this is not where. It's got to be through online. Or is it content? I'm trying to just get the page that you would see, but see, got all these things in here. Are that online stores pages? Maybe. I feel like they was just here, but oh, here. Duh, manage my courses. Blah. All right, let's just click on the logic. So this is what you would see. Let's say a full course. For logic, for example, the full course is 21 lectures. Those are pre-recorded lectures. Okay, so if you came here, so you'd probably get access. You'd probably see something like, hold on a second. I think my computer is. It's like frozen. It's not working. So I should be able to click on here and get you to the page. I don't know. I'm going to do edit lesson and just see what. Okay, there you go. This is what you would see. You purchase, let's say, a full logic course. So rather than going to like a link, like or sending links, it's built into the course, embedded. Every pre-recorded lecture there for the entire university course of it was 22 lectures there. Okay, that's what you get. Now I want to say that's actually different than if I go back to, let's see, the Patristic Face store. Just bear with me 1 second. I got 2 million tabs up here. No. What am I doing? Right, PF. Oh, here. I'm just going to do this. Patristic Faith. So if you want to, this will just guide you through how to find actually the courses. You come up here, shop, and you click courses, and it goes to here. So what we just looked at is if you purchase this. Okay. Now, what I want to explain, that is different from the Canvas course. That's what the Canvas. So that if like, look, you don't want to be that involved, but you want all the lectures. You can watch them at your own time. You would do one of those. Here's the Epistemology 1/3 course, Epistemology full course, and that's what it would look like from your end. Embedded lectures, and that you could watch. They're not links; they're actually embedded within that system. So it's just easier to. It's right there, all for you. You don't have to go somewhere else. Canvas is different. Canvas is, go to the dashboard, is an actual interactive, full-blown college, what we use at the college, with assignments, quizzes, projects, final exam, and like for example here, the syllabus. If I go to modules here, it's got its own modules. Weekly assignments, you can take it either at your own. There's announcements, there's recorded, there's office hours, and you get the recorded office hours. There's PowerPoints accompanied. So not only do you get the recorded lectures, you're having an interactive, here you can see all the assignments built out. You have check-in assignments. It's a full-on interactive, full-blown 16-week course. Or, you could take the 16-week course at your own speed. But then I lost the patristic faith in again. Where is... oh, here. That's what these Canvas courses are. If I get some more interest, we'll open up an epistemology one, full-on 16-word college course. And then you have tutoring stuff too, and then possibly we'll open a Canvas. But any of the ones that say Canvas, those are actually live, interactive, asynchronistic courses with weekly office hours on Zoom and stuff like that. So that's what. So they look very different. And that's as cheap as you're gonna get it. Those we're also working on these as accreditation. People, you can even do payment plans and stuff like that. But nobody should be complaining about the price of. It's cheaper than even any community college would offer you for a 16-week course, and you're getting it. Community college, you don't get weekly office hours. So the tutoring itself through office hours, if you avail of that, you don't have to every week. It's just if you schedule an office hours, it's available for you that you could get. Again, if it's $90 an hour for tutoring, the fact that you're getting, potentially, let's just look. Suppose without even any of the recorded lectures or any of the assignments. What the value would be. Just on that alone, if you avail 16 times 90, that's $1,440 worth of just tutoring material that you would be getting from anywhere from $650 to $750, assuming you're not even getting the rest of it. Then on top of that, you get all the pre-recorded lectures, about an hour and a half each, all the assignments, the grading, the paper, and potentially even accredited when we're working on that. So does that help answer the questions? Did I go down? Let's see. I was thinking about doing there is one and you can ask some of the people too that they've taken these courses, so they can give you like how was it. They can tell you how like awesome it was and whether they thought the value was worth it. Um, I know Dave has taken the course. I was thinking starting back up in January. A course is a course, of course, of course. Which leads me to Mr. Ed, and I want to talk about Mr. Ed. Okay, something weird. You know who Mr. Ed is, right? I'm singing this song. Instead of a course is a chorus. Oh, let's see. Mark, wow. Okay, donates another $20. Thanks for answering. Have you read God, History, Dialectic? Joseph Farrell was a quack by my priest. Again, not trying to start a stir. See if they're understand how the way that I read. I'm actually blind, so I'm doing Braille now. I've read all of Farrell's books through Braille. Incarnationally through my fingers. By the way, I'm going to show you something. Look what book my godson. I'll just get my Tony in Idaho, Boise area. He sent me a wonderful Christmas gift. The Ethics of Beauty. Look at that sucker. By Dr. Timothy Patitas. Is that how you pronounce Patitas? Yeah. Thank you, Tony. God bless you. He sent it to me because he wants me to read all the way through that. Now, I read in different ways. Often, I come up with, and I'm gonna have to do this now that school's done grading. I have a paper to write that I'll be presenting in Houston February 13th through 15th or something like that. 13th through 16th. I come up with a theme. I wrote an abstract, got it approved by my department at Carroll College, and then what do? I begin to write the paper. And as I write papers, I'm doing research and supporting argumentation by, going through, for example, and let's say I'm going through Anthony Kenny, Ancient Philosophy, and I'm looking for like a quote or something I put in. What I don't do when I'm writing a paper is read the entirety of Anthony Kenny's book again. Let's say, for example, I'm looking for something here, as obviously I did. Wow, look at this old ticket, dude. Aer Lingus, man. What date is that? From New York to Dublin. Obviously, I was looking, I put that in there because I was looking for something about Epicurus right here. I would read that section to find what I needed rather than reading the entire book, and then I would put that in. Anyways, that's how I've read Joseph Farrell, God, History, and Dialect. I have not read all of that. I've gone in to get certain quotes at certain times about something. I can't even remember what the reason was that I was going in and doing that, or what I was looking for. So, but I don't have an all or nothing kind of approach. This kind of hyper rigidity. Like, you've seen this online. You're either for Father Romanides or against him. You're either for Romanides. You're either with the terrorists. I'm like, oh, you are modernist Romanidians, or are you against Romanides? Like, and are you against all the you saw this stupid me? And it's like, what does it matter with people? Yeah, like, there's stuff that I would go to Romanides for that. Like I said, pulling some quotes, and I'm like, yeah, I like that. That's a great way to put it. Um, when it comes to spinal fluid and stuff like that, and other, stuff maybe about ecumenism, and like, no, I would not trust him on. Now Joseph Farrell, I think he, if correct me wrong, apostatized, but I'm like, and went off the deep end and stuff like that. But yeah, there's stuff I would go to Joseph Farrell for that I'd be like, yeah, he's good on this. There's stuff Mindor is good on. There's other stuff I wouldn't quote Mindor on. But like, I don't know why people can't be nuanced. Anyways, that would be my response to. I haven't read it all. I don't know all of like this. He definitely went off the deep end on certain stuff. I think we'll get into like Gnosticism and stuff. Like God, History, and Dialectics, great. Everything that I've read of it and pulled from, I don't have any problem from that. Again, orthodoxy transcends people and philosophers, and so people can be wrong about stuff and right, and when they write, sometimes they put it really well, and they should be quoted and cited. That's what I do. That's how I read and write. Mark also donates another $20. God bless you. In general, how do I handle differences of oughts in an orthodox example? I had one priest tell me that being nice is always a Christian way, but in a way I think that reduces to utilitarian. I've never heard a priest saying be nice. Like, I've always heard him criticize. Oh, here we go. My cat's coming in. Stop it. Isn't there something like Father Turbo said recently? We went off on being nice. Yeah, nicety is not a virtue. I want to read you something. Sometimes you should be gentle. Sometimes you shouldn't. Okay, I want to read the Bible to you. Ecclesiastes. All right. There's a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. There's a time to be gentle. Sometimes there's a time not to be. Sometimes, so everything in its right place. And it's very rare that there's any kind of universal, even when scripture uses the kind of hyperbolic language of all or none, they're never absolute command, like thou shalt not lie. Always, never. Well, no. St. Basil says there's times a Christian is actually would be immoral if they didn't. And we can think of the examples. This is what's known as the fallacy of accident. When you have a rule that you think is absolute. What absolute means in ethics is it's applied everywhere at all times by all people in the same way at the same degree. And scripture's just not like that. Again, that's a Western way of thinking. It's a legalistic. We have rules, objective rules, but just like a judge sees how to apply that. And if you apply a rule in the wrong way at the wrong time, the wrong intention, or it ends up being a sin or a vice. To be forgiving and gentle, in some cases, could be enabling and you're destroying somebody. To turn the other cheek, when you're called to defend your family, could be lead to a grave sin. So there's no fast and hard rule on all of these. So we have rules, and it's through discernment and maturing through experience. There we go. So part of that is asking your priest, but sometimes a priest may make a mistake on. That's why you seek. It says Scripture, a wise man seeks multiple counsel. So thank you so much for a wonderful question, Mark. Yeah, it does kind of reduce to utilitarianism. I wrote the final for the other college I'm working at, and one of the things utilitarianism has been criticized for is rule worshiping. Do you worship God or do you worship rules? Rules are the most important formulas and rules. You see this kind of autism of the West when it comes to always do this, always have to be nice. I saw this the other day. I had to block this person. I went on that stream in the chat. I mean, Jay had I can't remember who it was, but it was some guy. He was brought on. This guy brought Jay on to talk about, to refute the kind of Christmas is pagan stuff, and the people in the chat should never have. See, Father Deacon admitted mistakes. I made a mistake, and I started arguing with people in the chat. Such a waste of time. I didn't have discernment in that. And I asked for your and God's forgiveness that I shouldn't have done that, because it was just, these people were they weren't even listening. Like, all the answers Jay was providing. So they just wanted to argue all this stuff, this zeitgeist stuff, and Gnosticism, and I was not. Okay, what I'm sorry for is that I even got engaged in the chat. What I'm not sorry for is I was being mean and straightforward and making fun of people's positions, because they were so ridiculous they needed to be made fun of. And somebody comes on and immediately disrespectful to me. Now, I don't care about myself, but there is an office. Like, there is an etiquette, and it tells me a lot about. And so this person immediately goes off on, this is why, I forget. This is why, people in the Orthodox Church say that online epistemology. I'm not an online epistemologist, I'm clergy. I might do online epistemology, but don't let me in with, this is why they have the critiques of. And what they proceeded to do was use virtue piety signal since they wouldn't provide an argument. And why was I being mean? It wasn't being mean. It was the use of polemics and being straightforward and shaming a ridiculous position, just to cut through all the ridiculousness. Scripture says, answer a fool according to his folly. And when you do, is it being nice? No, it is not being nice. Am I doing evangelism? No, I'm not doing pastoral work on evangelism as a sort of online apologetics. The guy got that right, at least. In which a certain polemics, and it can be overdone, I've made mistakes before, but there's nothing in principle wrong with using the polemics to call something out and being straightforward and making fun of and shaming the position intellectually. They're ridiculous positions, and they should be shamed in the public sphere. This is the public sphere. Oh, no, you're a mean you're not supposed to be like, this is why nobody likes. All right, first of all, I see I've had enough experience. I know who you are. I can see right through this. Some lady, remember, like 4 months ago, tried this with me here in town. I'm like, you can just stop right now with your sociopathic emotional manipulation. It doesn't work on me. Like, you can't shame me using emotional shame. You're so mean, and that's not what a real Christian would do. The no real Christian fallacy. And I call it out, right? I'm like, I'd see exactly what you're doing. You're demonstrating the sociopathic, narcissistic, dark triad traits to hide, right? Because you can't actually address the argument. You switch it into trying to emotionally manipulate me. Now, what I to do? Like, think about this if this actually happened in the church, right? If a person spoke this way to the priest, do you think the priest would just be like, oh, well, I gotta be nice and effeminate and make the person feel well? But a father in a household, if their child started doing that, would they just turn the other cheek? The father would rebuke them, both fathers. I've seen it happen. There's a time to be gentle. There's a time to be stern and call them out and be like, you're a sociopath. I've seen Father Russell tell somebody straight to his face, you are not a man of principle. Straight to the person. I was like, wow. I'm like, it was called for. The person was not, they needed to hear it. So this idea now that we live in this really relativistic society and everything's effeminate, right? Like you have the effeminate hippie G, you're just always supposed to be gentle and this is mean. The people that are saying that are being convicted. They're either wrong about something. They don't respect hierarchy and authority, right? And their internet just feeds into this because it's the great leveler. It makes everybody feel like they're even. There is no authority. Nobody's more qualified than anybody. There is no hierarchy. And so this person could talk to a clergy member like, and he just kept going at it with me. And I just kept, pointing out that he was a sociopath. And eventually I'm like, I shouldn't even talk. Like, obviously this isn't going anywhere. And I blocked him. Anyways, Mark, wow, another $50. I said $500. $500. Yes. Woo! My priest joked that if I want to argue, I should become Jewish. That's kind of funny. It is kind of funny. Well, funny, it feels like he's throwing logic out entirely. How can I engage fairly and work it out? God created logic. Could it be wrong? Yeah, so especially with those who are focused on feelings. I want to share another verse with you. You could say I disagree because other priests have said the opposite. Maybe that's your personal opinion. You don't like to actually do that, but historically you can't say apologia, argument, rhetoric, and debate doesn't exist in the church and it's universally banned. That's what I'd probably be like. So it's your personal opinion that you don't like it. Or maybe this particular person shouldn't be doing it. That might be true. But there's no way that you could actually say, nobody should ever argue. I want you to turn with me in your Bibles to 2 Corinthians 10:5. We demolish arguments. We smash them. We crush them. And every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. Talk about tag, by the way. You want to know where tag is? 2 Corinthians 10:5. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. There is no independent, pretended autonomy is fake and gray. Everything must be made obedient to Christ. And anything that sets it up, we smash it. We destroy it. That's right out of the Bible. Right there. So that's 2 Corinthians 10:5. Um, so the question then is, should a particular person be involved? There might be times from I would definitely say if you are a neophyte for first 3 years being orthodox, if you're a catechumen or inquire, certainly not. Like you shouldn't be arguing with people. I've made many mistakes that way, and it was hard because I was already a professional philosopher teaching philosophy at the university and arguing. Um, and maybe that made it a little bit different. Maybe it made it worse. Maybe I let into my pride and ego. But what I say, generally speaking, a general rule of thumb is, as a catechumen inquiry, just learn it. Um, Absorb it the first 3 years. As a neophyte, don't. I wouldn't argue. You might be called to apologetics. You might be talented. God might have given you a gift for that. In which case, I would generally, there could be exceptions to it. I'd have to look at each case. But generally, a rule of thumb is I would be wait till you're over 30. And I would train you in philosophy and classic liberal arts educations, quadrivium and trivium. Probably have you get a BA. I'd have you get some life experience, maybe travel for a year or two. And then pick something to specialize in as far as if you're going to go into apologetics, probably philosophy or logic at the grad level. And then go to seminary another 3. That would be my generally prescribed. That would be another 3 years, get an MDiv or something, another kind of certificate or something from seminary so that you know the theology. Then I'd be like, okay, now you're sufficiently equipped to argue. So I don't think it's for everybody. I think it can be extremely problematic and destructive. And again, there can be exceptions to the cases. It is hard. Like, what do you do when somebody's like coming into orthodoxy and they're a professional debater, professor of philosophy? Can you be like, well, you're no longer to make arguments, and you're like, it's kind of hard to. But maybe at times you shouldn't. Like, again, so it's you just gotta have the discernment. But certainly, yes, trivium too. You want them together, quadrivium and trivium. Good question, Vigo. But you'll be blessed if you're obedient. Like, what I definitely would encourage is like go priest hopping and be like until you get the answer that you want. Like but it's complicated, isn't it? Like, I don't really know. Your priest in person can't really speak much. Like, maybe he has good reasons to say you particularly. I don't know. Maybe it's possible the priest doesn't understand that like this is actually something that we've done in the church and has a historical precedence. And can be done. It's rooted in scripture. Maybe it's just a personal opinion. Maybe he struggled with something. Like, I don't know. Like, it's really hard for me to answer that question. All I can say is, there's no universal prohibition on it. Just the opposite. Like, we actually have historical precedent of it occurring in the church, and there's good use to, like, it still happened like today. So I hope that answers the question. I didn't know Father just Side Trenum did at the Young Republicans event. Do you know what's funny about that? When I went to Thomas Aquinas College, like, they would have the like Young Republicans conferences, and depending on your college, like who had the most people registered would win like a free trip and hotel to wow, Mark, you really Merry Christmas. Thank you, Mark. You really didn't have to. Donates $100. Yeah, you can email. I could email you and talk to you about that. Absolutely. God bless you, Mark. Thank you. That really. Now I can buy my wife gifts for Christmas. Thank you. That's really special. God bless you, Mark. But yeah, feel free to write me. You can. Hold on. Father Ananias, Patristic Faith. I have a bunch of like college, but this is better. Like when you guys are contacting me for this stuff, to have it through the Patristic Faith email. But yeah, let's chat. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. Um, let's see. I was on. Oh, anyways, we won every single year at Thomas Aquinas College because everybody was so conservative that we won a free trip to Santa Barbara for the Young Republicans convention, which I never went to any of the talks. God forgive me, it was just an excuse to party on State Street and drink and have a free, really nice hotel room and food. Oh, Mark, please! I'm starting to feel bad. God bless you. Another $100. You really don't have to. Like, God bless you so much. How do I like the? Yeah, wonderful. I'm beyond words. I'm in silence, Mark. So thank you. God bless you and your family, and feel free to reach out to me, and send me an email. We'll have a chat. Okay. Anyways, it's just interesting you brought up the Young Republicans. Oh, I got a reminder from Carroll College. Grades are due tomorrow. Already turned them in. Already turned it in. Done with grades. Officially submitted them. Thank you for your love. Yes, everybody. I love you guys too. It's good to be when brothers dwell in unity and be together. So I haven't heard Father Josiah's. I didn't even know he was. I wonder if it is the Young Republicans up in Santa. Usually they have it at Santa Barbara in the California. It was annoying. The crowd couldn't stop cheering. Joachim asked good questions. We're studying philosophy at a liberal university in Norway. That's hard. It just depends on what type of person. First of all, can you? Not every, even at a liberal university, is every professor liberal. If you can find a way to navigate around that, and get good classes that aren't propaganda, that aren't talking about politics and stuff like that, it might be. Certainly, I wouldn't go into debt for, because degrees are just becoming kind of more meaningless these days. But the only thing good about that is it is formalized, right? Like there's a program, and it does make a difference than just learning this on your own. That's why I'm trying to build these courses for you that you're not just learning on your own. If you could do the Canvas course, it's the most beneficial. And by the way, all of those Canvas courses are the beta plan and the prototypes for launching the Orthodox University that I'm working with philosophy professors and other professors that we're going to launch. But we're collecting data and trying to figure out how to, when we officially launch and have this, under the blessing of a bishop and stuff like that, I want all the kind of, kinks worked out and all the data collected to present that in the best way possible so that it is formalized. You don't have to depend on a liberal university. Be extremely cheap. You're not going to go in debt. And so I went to a very liberal university, University College of Dublin. And I don't think everybody could have done it. I think you have to be a certain type of person. It got frustrating. Europe is a different type of liberal, and it's just everywhere. Like it's like you feel like you're fighting. Yeah, Crispy knows what I'm talking about. Um, their moderates are extreme liberals here in the United States, and Europe is plagued with like full on critical theorists, deconstructionists, leftists, anarcho communists, and stuff. Like, so they're really radicalized over. And so it's frustrating that you don't have anybody to talk. Like, I couldn't relate to anybody. I felt very isolated, and that was difficult. But I'm also the type of person that's a fighter. So I fought my way through, and I did argue with like these people. But as far as the courses I took, none of them they were all awesome. None of them had any of the liberal stuff in it. I took Dermot Moran's phenomenology class, so I learned about phenomenology. Philosophy of science, epistemology, ancient philosophy, and I'm trying to remember all the. I have my pull up my what do you call it to remember all the classes that I took for. Vogelin. I took a class on Vogelin, Eric Vogelin, and none of the classes were excellent. And I was a TA at the time at University College Dublin, so I was teaching a variety of courses and learning philosophy of language, philosophy of science, epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, stuff like that. And so I navigated as far as the courses, and I was an influence. It's just being around the people that was. Anyone in the chat have any experience with St. John the Wonder Worker Mission Alpine? No, I don't know. Object Full donates $10. Any Orthodox book around motherhood or daughterhood? Let me ask my wife if she knows. Hey, Melissa? Do we have any book recommendations, Orthodox book recommendations for motherhood? Mother-daughter. Olympias? Letters to Olympias, maybe? No, I know. I don't know. It's a good question. All right. One other thing I want to bring up, and maybe we'll do it for tomorrow's Q&A discussion to go over, but it was going all the way back to a course is a course, and a course is a course, and of course. But it was a horse. It was Mr. Ed, and I had a weird thing happen to me this semester, and I won't tell you what college but it's when we were going over Aristotle, kind of metaphysics. Aristotle has different soul, like talking about animation, the soul, anima, the principle of life. There's plant souls and vegetative souls, sensitive soul, animal souls, and rational souls, and how he defines human beings as a rational animal, and how that all worked. And we're going through the kind of metaphysics and what it means to be a soul, and how those principles of motion and change appropriate to its kind. And I got pushback. I had a bunch of students who thought animals, for some reason, were rational moral beings. I had to spend the whole class trying to convince them, explain to them. I wasn't being rude but I was frustrated inside. It didn't come out. I didn't show it, but just kind of be like, well, this is how Aristotle. This is what the argument would be. But I could not believe that I found myself in a position that I actually had to argue for something that's just so patently obvious. Animals are obviously not rational moral beings, no matter how intelligent they may actually be. And trust me, my cat is getting close. If you haven't seen it, my Twitter posted a couple weeks ago, found my cat reading Descartes' mathematics, and then my cat's watching the TV. Hold on, I think she found it. What? Oh, Orthodox Motherhood. My wife said orthomotherhood.com has a list of the books. Manny, if you're wondering. Orthomotherhood.com. Alright, back to the story. And my cat sometimes makes me doubt myself. Watches the TV, and I can see that it's not just looking at lights. Some of it's like it's learning and thinking at some level through the images. I don't know what that's like, but it's more than just seeing, like, it's, you can see it's following along, even like looking in the right areas. That's what's crazy. And I caught my cat the other day, and I filmed it. Watching a documentary on Da Vinci. I'll see if I can pull it up and show you. Now, of course, I joke about this. I don't think my cat is rational. Brought this up with one of the professors, and they were like, well, maybe they don't understand what rationality is. I mean, maybe that's true too. I'm not just speaking of any type of intelligence, but I discuss that and I define that in the classroom. But let's see. I'll find it. Man, I have a lot of tweets. Okay, got it. All right, let's share. So this is Jasper. And I caught him reading The Geometry of Descartes. And you just look into his eyes too, and you're like, you can see that there's some sort of, obviously what we would call I wouldn't call it reasoning processes or something like that, but like loosely speaking, yeah. But watch this. So he's studying. He's looking in the right ways. He's like reading the screen. He does this all the time. And he's getting better at it. He's like figuring out how to learn from the TV. I love this space scene that comes up. Watch. With the space on the... So obviously I can tell my little buddy Jasper is remarkably intelligent, especially for, a cat. At the same time, I know my cat's not a rational moral being. My cat does stuff that I say, bad kitty. Get down from there. You're not supposed to eat that. I don't think my cat knows, in terms of rationality, what they can respond to, and there's a level of cognition, right? So I can speak, like, loosely speaking, yeah, my cat knows it's not supposed to do that. But I don't hold my cat morally accountable. I think it's a moral agent. I'm being loose with my words. I'm anthropomorphizing my cat in many sense. You need reason and autonomy. Like animals don't have the level of autonomy that can rise above instinct and their conditioning in their environment, whereas human beings do, such that it makes them moral agents. Also, what I mean by rationality is obviously clearly there's a reasoning process. It's learning stuff. But what we know about animals, and again, I would tie this back to people like, how do you know that? It's like, well, because of metaphysics. There's a real distinction. It's not just an arbitrary distinction or just level of intelligence. We have more of it and animals have less. I'm saying it's something different in kind. It's an essential difference. Now, you need something like an Aristotelian metaphysics to be able to explain this. But I'm like, I can see it. Like I like intuitively, I just know it, right? And let's say my right brain, and I can hand it over to my left brain and explain to you in terms of Aristotelianism or something like that. But the fact of the matter, what I mean by reason, my cat is a nominalist, not by choice. But they're unable to abstract and obtain universals or create universals or tap in such that they have a conceptual sphere that's tied together so they can subsume particulars and names and objects and properties under the universal by which they abstracted from the many. They have no concepts. Concept in philosophy, and even defined by Kant, is the universal. They don't have it. They have particulars, and they link them together. There can even be a discursive reasoning process through the particulars. They have a memory. They can learn. They can gather more particulars. They can even assemble them together, right, in different ways, through association. But they cannot abstract to universals. They cannot develop concepts, right? Let alone then formulate even internally, not to mention externally. Once concepts are formed and tied together within a web of belief, do they have a belief system? Ever think about this? Do they have philosophies? Do they have worldviews? No, this is absurd. And they're like, well, how do you know? Oh, now all of a sudden you're a skeptic, right? And they appeal to like Descartes. Well, we don't. It's like, you could go that way, but now if you're going to use we don't know, then you're stuck on the problem of other minds. You don't even know if anybody in the room is an actual rational, so that's not going to help you with your argument. And going from we don't know to we know that animals are rational doesn't work. So you can't use skepticism to make a positive claim. So they don't have a web of belief. They don't have a conceptual sphere of this, what Sellers and Kahneman call the space of reasons. Just, again, there's a sort of reasoning. I think they even collect, but they're like a nominalist. I don't know what to... They make associations. They learn. They get better. They can even have a proto-language and signify these different things. Certainly cannot, from the sphere of reason, sphere of reason, the space of reasons, the conceptual sphere, a worldview, a web of beliefs, then formulate from universals and concepts predication. Do you really think make propositions even internally before outwardly expressing? That doesn't happen with animals. That's crazy. Do you think that animals have the 10 categories? Aristotelian predicates conceptually in their mind, or Kant's 12? I can't believe I actually have to explain this. And because they don't have the level of autonomy that rise above their instinct, right, their animal behavior, and they don't have what we define as rational thought. They have thought. They can be really intelligent. Look at my cat. It's not rational. They don't have worldviews and everything I talked about is the space of reason. They're not moral beings. You need both. And I couldn't believe that I was getting pushed back from the class. And then I even had a student, after I thought I made headway with the students and explained all this stuff, wrote a whole paper on how I was wrong, that animals are rational moral beings. I'm like, what's the reason for this? Because kids watch too many Disney movies. You watch too many grow up movies with animals talking and being rational. Yeah, maybe that's why you think. There's other reasons too. I think that naturalism and Darwinian and neo-Darwinian evolution that's predicated on nominalism, that there is no real distinction in kinds. Did you know that that's actually necessary for evolution? There's no real distinction between species. It's just a phyletic gradualism, right? There's no... It's just more the same. Not a difference in kind. If you study evolution, you'll realize that that's what philosophically makes that possible. We're all just more the same, just matter and motion, you see, and we just might have, which was part of what I was reading the essay. Just because you have more of this doesn't mean you're different. It's like, well, you're assuming a type of naturalism and a denial of real essentialism. Ninja Turtles, exactly. Talking, reasoning rats in the sewers, dude. Master Splinter, are you kidding me? No wonder. Relativism, skepticism. I was trying to think about all, like, how could people even believe this stuff? Veganism. Globalism. That, to think that you're special and above everything else in there, that's speciesism. In fact, human beings are cancer on and should be eliminated. That is the environment, the radical environmentalist, the vegan. I guarantee that has an effect. Of course, we're like higher than the animals. You could ask me, how do I know? But like, because God revealed it. That's the only way you know most of this stuff. So I could argue empirically or philosophically, but at the end of the day, isn't it because you're made in the image of God, and obviously God made you above the animals. Man named it. That's how I know. Furryism. Kids are dressing for, like, of course, everything is being blurred, right, and confused. There is no distinctions anymore between. I think all those reasons why, because otherwise, nobody in the right mind would ever think an animal is a rational moral being. Not Strong donates $10. What's the first church father authored book I should read? For example, St. Thomas, St. Athanasius on the Incarnation. That's exactly the first one that you should read. Then St. John of Damascus on the Orthodox faith. You already read. Good question. Thank you for the $10 super chat. It's 1 o'clock here. But I think that would make a good stream. I'd love to get Kotel Patrick on and do a stream about how we know animals are not rational moral beings. How about that? That would be a great... Okay, so let's depart in peace. I see that made by Jim Bob on his channel, Made by Jim Bob, is doing Silly's Atheist Takes live. So you can cruise on over there. I want to thank all of you again for wonderful, especially our dear brother Mark, who donated those huge super chat. You made our Christmas, like, really. I'm going to take your money and I'm going to bless my wife with gifts of love. So, Jim Bob Raid there. Thank you, Crispy, for putting that on. Great topics. Again, fun playing the Kahoot's philosophy game with you. We got to do more stuff like that. And keep me and my family in your prayers. And thank you for everybody who donated and had a super chat today. And Merry Christmas. Happy Holy Days, as I say. Blessed Nativity, Christ is born. Let us glorify Him. Both for the new calendar and old calendar. And may God keep you and preserve you for many years. God bless all of you. Until tomorrow, God bless.